Hi, everyone. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. Sometimes people's audacity knows no bounds. And sometimes the person you once loved will try to trap you into a life that was never yours to live. My name is Connor, and this is the story of how my ex-girlfriend tried to make me responsible for another man's child, and how her friends turned into a harassment mob when I refused to play along. I'm 20 years old and work as an IT project manager for a mid-sized tech company in Austin, Texas. My job is stable, pays well, and offers good benefits and work-life balance. I try to organize my life. Some years ago, I was in what I thought was a serious relationship with Vanessa. She was working as a marketing coordinator for a consumer goods company, and we'd been together for about 2 years. We met through mutual friends, started dating casually, and gradually built what seemed like a solid relationship with real potential for long-term commitment. Vanessa and I had discussed the future in general terms, whether we wanted children someday, where we might want to live eventually, career goals, and financial planning. She knew I was serious about her and was considering proposing within the next year. We were building toward marriage, a shared home, and maybe starting a family in a few years. Looking back, I realize I missed some warning signs because I was focused on the positive aspects of our relationship. Vanessa was charming and social, but I trusted her completely and never questioned these social activities, believing that a healthy relationship included independent friendships and interests. The truth about Vanessa's betrayal came from an unexpected source: her best friend. Vanessa and her friend had been close since college, and I'd gotten to know this friend pretty well through group hangouts and double dates. She was quiet and thoughtful, the opposite of Vanessa's outgoing personality, and she'd always been kind to me. One evening, this friend showed up at my condo unannounced, asking if we could talk privately. She told me that she'd been struggling with whether to tell me something for a long time, but her conscience wouldn't let her stay silent anymore. Vanessa had been having an affair with some other guy for at least 4 months, possibly longer. Vanessa's best friend had discovered the affair by accident and confronted Vanessa privately. Vanessa admitted to the relationship, but swore it was just a temporary thing, that she loved me and was going to end things with this new guy soon. But weeks passed and the affair continued, which prompted Vanessa's best friend to come forward despite knowing it would destroy her friendship with Vanessa. I was devastated, but grateful that Vanessa's best friend had the courage to tell me the truth. I asked her for any evidence she could provide, and she forwarded me screenshots of some of the messages she'd seen between Vanessa and her affair partner. The texts were explicit, leaving no doubt about the nature of their relationship. That evening, I confronted Vanessa about it. She initially tried to deny everything. When I showed her the screenshots her best friend had provided, she admitted to knowing the guy, but denied having an affair with him. I didn't yell or create drama. I simply told Vanessa that our relationship was over, that cheating was a deal breaker I'd always been clear about, and that I needed her not to set foot in my house any longer. She tried various tactics, crying, promising she would never keep contact with the guy again, begging for another chance. But my decision was final. Trust, once broken, couldn't be rebuilt, and I wasn't interested in trying. Vanessa picked up the rest of her things in my place that weekend. I felt a sense of relief that I'd discovered her betrayal before we'd gotten more seriously entangled. We had no shared property, no joint accounts, no legal ties that complicated the separation. It was a clean break. After Vanessa left, I blocked her number, unfriended her on all social media platforms, and made it clear to mutual friends that I had no interest in updates about her life or any attempts at reconciliation. Some friends took sides, but most understood my position and respected my boundaries. Vanessa's best friend reached out a few times after the breakup to check on me and apologize for being the bearer of bad news. I reassured her that she'd done the right thing and that I was grateful for her honesty. Even though I developed a genuine friendship with her, she never tried to pursue anything romantic with me, despite mutual friends suggesting she might have feelings beyond friendship. Vanessa's best friend simply remained a supportive friend during a difficult transition. The months following the breakup were focused on healing and personal growth. I threw myself into work, started working out regularly, and reconnected with friends. By the 5th month post-breakup, I felt fully moved on and was even casually dating again, though nothing serious had developed. The peace I'd found came crashing down on a Tuesday evening. I was making dinner when my phone rang from an unknown number. I normally don't answer calls from numbers I don't recognize, but I was expecting a call back from a client about some deal, so I picked up. The voice on the other end was Vanessa's, and my first instinct was to hang up immediately. But something in her tone made me pause. She started by apologizing for calling, saying she needed to talk to me about something important and knew I'd blocked her regular number. Vanessa began with what sounded like an attempt at reconciliation, talking about how much she'd changed over the past months, how she'd realized what she'd lost when she had something to do with another guy, how therapy had helped her understand her mistakes. I cut her off and told her I wasn't interested in revisiting our relationship, that I'd moved on completely, and she should do the same. That's when Vanessa dropped the real reason for her call. She said she was pregnant about 6 months along, and that there was a possibility the baby was mine. She claimed we'd been together around the time of conception, and that she believed I was the father. My response was immediate and certain. I told Vanessa that there was absolutely no possibility I was the father of her child. I knew the timeline of when we'd broken up, and I knew we hadn't been intimate in the weeks before the breakup because she'd been distant and making excuses. The math didn't work in any scenario where I could be responsible. Vanessa tried to argue about timelines and possibilities, but I cut her off firmly. I told her that, regardless of any confusion she might have about dates, I knew with certainty that any child she was carrying was not mine. I warned her never to contact me again, reminded her that I had no obligation to engage with her pregnancy situation, and ended the call before blocking that number as well. After hanging up, I sat there feeling a mixture of anger and unease. Vanessa's attempt to connect her pregnancy to me felt calculated rather than genuinely uncertain. If she really thought I might be the father, she would have reached out months ago when she first discovered the pregnancy, not waited until she was already many months along. Curiosity and concern for my own protection drove me to do some discreet research. Through mutual connections and some careful social media investigation, I discovered the real story behind Vanessa's pregnancy and her sudden interest in reconnecting with me. Vanessa had indeed gotten pregnant by her affair partner. When she told him about the pregnancy, expecting him to step up and take responsibility, he denied that the child could be his and suggested she must have been sleeping with other people. The guy refused to acknowledge paternity, stopped responding to Vanessa's messages, and eventually moved cities to avoid the situation entirely. Vanessa found herself pregnant and alone, realizing that the man she cheated with had no interest in being a father or supporting her through the pregnancy. Her affair partner had completely ghosted her, changed his number, and effectively vanished from her life. Meanwhile, Vanessa was facing the reality of single motherhood without financial or emotional support from the biological father. That's when Vanessa's attention turned back to me. She knew I was stable, responsible, employed with a good income, and the kind of person who took commitment seriously. She'd seen through social media that I was doing well professionally and seemed settled in my life. Vanessa calculated that if she could convince me there was any possibility of paternity, I might feel obligated to step up and help her. Her strategy was to plant enough doubt about timelines and conception dates that I'd feel morally responsible for at least supporting her through the pregnancy and helping raise the child afterward. She was banking on my sense of responsibility and our history together to override the mathematical impossibility of my paternity. Understanding Vanessa's true motives only strengthened my resolve to maintain complete no contact. I documented the phone call, saved the number she'd called from, and made notes about the conversation in case I needed evidence later. I also consulted briefly with a lawyer friend who confirmed that I had no legal obligation to engage with Vanessa's pregnancy situation unless formally compelled through court proceedings. I assumed that once I'd firmly rejected her claim and refused further contact, Vanessa would accept reality and focus on her actual situation. I was wrong about how far she'd be willing to push this narrative. 3 months later, I received certified mail at my home address, a legal summons for a paternity case. Vanessa had filed a lawsuit in family court claiming I was the father of her child, which had been born some weeks earlier, and that I was refusing to take responsibility or provide child support. The paperwork painted me as a deadbeat father who'd abandoned his pregnant girlfriend and refused to acknowledge his own child. I was shocked by the audacity. Vanessa knew with absolute certainty that I was not the father of her child, yet she'd committed to this lie in legal documents under penalty of perjury. The summons required my appearance in court and warned that failure to respond could result in a default judgment against me. I immediately hired a family law attorney who specialized in paternity disputes. She reviewed the case, took detailed notes about my relationship timeline with Vanessa, and confirmed that a court-ordered DNA test would definitively resolve the matter. My attorney was confident that once paternity testing proved I wasn't the father, the case would be dismissed, and Vanessa could potentially face consequences for filing a frivolous lawsuit. The attorney also explained that Vanessa's strategy wasn't uncommon. Some women in desperate financial situations would name stable, responsible ex-partners as potential fathers even when they knew the claim was false, hoping that the man would either agree to informal support to avoid court proceedings or that he might develop enough of a bond with the child during the process to continue supporting them even after negative paternity results. My attorney filed a response denying all allegations and requesting immediate DNA testing to establish paternity. The court granted this motion, and testing was scheduled within 2 weeks. I had to go to a medical facility to provide a DNA sample, which was then compared to samples from Vanessa's daughter. During the court proceedings, I had to listen to Vanessa's completely fabricated version of our relationship ending. She claimed that we'd been trying to have a baby together, that I'd been thrilled when she got pregnant, but that I'd abandoned her when the reality of fatherhood became too much pressure. She portrayed herself as a devoted girlfriend who'd been blindsided by my sudden coldness and rejection. Vanessa's attorney presented text messages between us that were selectively edited to make it seem like I'd been planning a future with her while she was pregnant. In reality, these texts were from before the breakup and had nothing to do with her pregnancy, which hadn't existed during our relationship. The manipulation was sophisticated enough to create doubt if someone didn't know the full context. My attorney countered with a complete text history showing our breakup, the reason for it, and the timeline proving I couldn't be the father. When the DNA results came back, they showed conclusively that I had zero genetic match to Vanessa's daughter. I was categorically excluded as the biological father with 99.9% certainty. The judge reviewed the results, dismissed all claims against me, and warned Vanessa that filing false paternity claims could have serious legal consequences. I felt vindicated but exhausted. The court process had taken months, cost me several $1,000s in legal fees, and created significant stress in my life. I'd had to explain the situation to my employer in case Vanessa tried to contact me at work, inform my family about the false accusations, and deal with the emotional toll of being publicly accused of abandoning a child that wasn't mine. I assumed the DNA results and court dismissal would finally end Vanessa's attempts to involve me in her life. Once again, I underestimated her persistence and her willingness to distort reality to fit her needs. Within days of a court ruling, my phone started receiving text messages from new numbers I didn't recognize. These were Vanessa's messages, sent from various apps and temporary numbers to get around my blocking. The content was emotional manipulation designed to make me feel guilty for refusing to help her. Her messages claimed that I'd always said I loved her, so how could I abandon her when she needed me most? She wrote that even though the DNA test proved the baby wasn't biologically mine, the child still needed a good man in her life, and I had loved her once. She suggested that love should transcend biology and that a real man would step up to help raise a child regardless of paternity. Vanessa also started rewriting the history of our relationship ending. She downplayed the cheating, saying we'd both had problems and made mistakes during a difficult time. But couldn't we move past that for the sake of giving her daughter a stable father figure? She acted as though her affair was a minor relationship rough patch rather than a deliberate betrayal that had deservedly ended our relationship. The messages came at all hours, early morning, late night, during my workday. Vanessa was relentless in her attempts to guilt me into taking on responsibility for her child. She'd send photos of the baby with captions about how the child deserved a father. She'd describe her financial struggles as a single mother and suggest that I could easily afford to help her. I didn't respond to any of these messages. I saved screenshots of everything for documentation purposes, blocked each new number as it appeared, and continued to maintain complete no contact. I'd learned from the court case that engaging with Vanessa only encouraged more manipulation, and I wasn't going to give her any opening. When direct messages to me didn't produce the results Vanessa wanted, she shifted tactics. She began venting to her friends about the situation, but with a heavily edited version of events that painted me as the villain. According to mutual acquaintances who still had contact with both of us, Vanessa was telling people that I was heartless, that I was refusing to help raise her baby despite having been in a relationship with her during the pregnancy, and that I'd turned my back on someone I'd claimed to love. Her friend group, loyal to Vanessa and operating with incomplete information, believed her version of events. Many of them didn't know about the cheating that had ended our relationship. They didn't know about her affair partner's existence, or that DNA testing had conclusively proved I wasn't the father. They only knew Vanessa's story about a good man who'd promised to love her, but abandoned her when she needed help. These friends began attacking me on social media and through direct messages. I started receiving hostile DMs calling me a deadbeat, accusing me of abandoning a child, questioning my character and integrity. People I barely knew or had never met were contacting me to express their disgust at my supposed behavior. The social media harassment was particularly coordinated and aggressive. Vanessa's friends would post vague messages about men who abandon kids without naming me directly, but tagging mutual connections who would know exactly who they meant. They'd share inspirational quotes about real men stepping up to raise children regardless. They'd post articles about the importance of father figures in children's lives with pointed comments clearly directed at me. Some posts did name me directly, calling me out by tagging my profile and accusing me of refusing to support my child. These friends claimed I was hiding behind DNA test results to avoid moral responsibility, that even if I wasn't the biological father, I should still help Vanessa since we'd been in a relationship during her pregnancy. The harassment spread beyond people who knew Vanessa personally. Her story had been shared in mom groups and online forums, and I started receiving messages from complete strangers lecturing me about responsibility and fatherhood. People who knew nothing about the actual situation were calling me heartless and selfish based entirely on Vanessa's false narrative. The most frustrating aspect was how many of these harassers genuinely believed they were taking a moral stand. They thought they were defending a struggling single mother against a deadbeat dad, not realizing they were participating in the harassment of someone who'd been falsely accused. Their sense of righteous indignation made them aggressive and unwilling to consider that they might not have the full story. Some of Vanessa's friends almost certainly knew the truth, but chose to harass me anyway. They'd been part of her social circle during our relationship and would have known about the affair. But they prioritized their loyalty to Vanessa over fairness to me, apparently believing that her need for help justified lying about my involvement. I was shocked by the sheer entitlement of the situation. Vanessa genuinely seemed to believe she had the right to my time, money, and emotional support simply because we'd once dated. Her friends apparently agreed that my stability and responsibility made me obligated to help raise a child I hadn't fathered and had no connection to whatsoever. The harassment put me in an impossible position. Ignoring it meant letting false narratives spread unchallenged, but engaging with it meant giving Vanessa and her friends the attention and reaction they wanted. I was torn between wanting to avoid drama and needing to protect my reputation and boundaries. After 2 weeks of escalating harassment, I knew I needed to take formal action. Hoping the situation would resolve itself wasn't working, and the attacks were becoming more aggressive rather than fading away. I reached out to the attorney who'd represented me in the paternity case and explained what was happening. My attorney reviewed the screenshots and documentation I'd compiled of all the harassment. She confirmed that what Vanessa and her friends were doing constituted harassment and potentially defamation, since they were making false public statements about me that damaged my reputation. She recommended a multi-step approach to stop the behavior through legal channels. First, my attorney drafted and sent cease and desist letters to Vanessa and the 4 friends who'd been most aggressive in their harassment campaign. These letters outlined the specific harassing behaviors, explained that all allegations against me had been disproven in court through DNA testing, and warned that continued harassment could result in legal action, including restraining orders and defamation lawsuits. The cease and desist letters had an immediate impact on the friends who received them, apparently facing actual legal consequences rather than just participating in what they saw as justified social pressure made them reconsider their actions. 3 of the 4 friends immediately stopped all contact and deleted their social media posts mentioning me. The 4th friend continued for another few days, apparently believing the legal threats were empty, until my attorney sent a follow-up letter specifically detailing the defamation claims we could file based on her false statements. That finally convinced her to stop and remove her posts as well. Vanessa herself didn't stop after receiving the cease and desist, so my attorney helped me file formal harassment reports with local police. We documented every text message, every voicemail, every social media post, and DM that constituted unwanted contact. The police took reports and issued a formal warning to Vanessa about continued contact. My attorney also helped me file for a civil harassment restraining order, which required a court hearing where I presented all the evidence of Vanessa's persistent unwanted contact despite repeated requests to stop. The judge granted a temporary restraining order and scheduled a hearing for a permanent order. At the hearing, Vanessa tried to argue that she was just seeking help for her daughter and that I was overreacting to friendly outreach. But when faced with the documented evidence of hundreds of contacts through dozens of different numbers and accounts, all after I'd explicitly requested no contact, the judge wasn't sympathetic. The permanent restraining order was granted, prohibiting Vanessa from any contact with me for 3 years. The combination of legal action against both Vanessa and her friends effectively ended the harassment campaign. Once her friends realized they could face personal legal consequences for their actions, their loyalty to Vanessa's false narrative disappeared quickly. They didn't want restraining orders, defamation lawsuits, or harassment charges on their records for someone else's drama. The entire ordeal from the initial pregnancy call to the final restraining order took about 10 months of my life and cost me thousands of dollars in legal fees. It was exhausting, stressful, and frustrating in ways I never could have anticipated when I first broke up with Vanessa after discovering her affair. I learned several important lessons from this experience. First, clean breaks after relationship endings are essential. My decision to block Vanessa immediately and maintain zero contact after our breakup protected me from months of manipulation that might have created more complicated emotional entanglements. Second, documentation is crucial when dealing with someone who's willing to lie about you. Every text message I saved, every phone call I documented, every piece of evidence I preserved became important when I needed to prove harassment in court. Without that documentation, my claims would have been much harder to support. Third, legal protection is worth pursuing when harassment escalates. I initially hesitated to involve attorneys and courts, thinking it seemed like overkill for what started as just annoying messages. But once harassment begins affecting your professional life and mental health, legal intervention becomes necessary rather than optional. Fourth, don't assume that mutual friends will know or care about the truth when someone spreads lies about you. Vanessa's friends were willing to attack me based entirely on her word, without asking for my side or considering that they might not have full information. People's loyalty to their friends often overrides their commitment to fairness or truth. Most importantly, I learned that some people will feel entitled to your resources, time, and emotional energy simply because you once had a relationship with them. Vanessa genuinely believed that our past together gave her the right to demand my involvement in her life indefinitely, regardless of how our relationship ended or whether I had any actual responsibility for her situation. I occasionally wonder how Vanessa is doing as a single mother, but not with any sense of guilt or obligation. She made choices that led to her current situation: cheating on a stable relationship, getting pregnant by someone who wouldn't take responsibility, lying in court about paternity, and harassing someone who'd repeatedly asked to be left alone. The consequences of those choices are hers to bear, not mine. The restraining order expires next year, and I hope Vanessa has moved on with her life and found actual support rather than trying to manipulate ex-partners into responsibilities they don't owe. But if she does try to contact me again, I'm prepared to renew the legal protections that finally gave me peace. If you're dealing with a similar situation, an ex trying to involve you in something that isn't yours, friends harassing you based on lies, or anyone attempting to guilt you into responsibilities you don't owe, know that you have the right to protect yourself legally. You don't owe anyone access to your life simply because you once cared about them, and you're not obligated to help raise a child that isn't yours, no matter how much someone plays the victim. Real responsibility is about taking care of your actual obligations, not accepting false ones because someone else's manipulation makes you feel guilty. The right boundaries aren't selfish. They're essential for maintaining your own integrity and future. Stand firm, document everything, and don't hesitate to seek legal protection when harassment crosses the line from annoying to damaging. Your peace and reputation are worth protecting, and you don't need anyone's permission to defend yourself from false accusations and entitled demands. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is refuse to be pulled into someone else's chaos, even when they're very loud about wanting you involved.